Well, good afternoon. How are you doing today? So, are you in your class right now?
Yeah.
And you're here visiting with us, right?
Yes.
Very, very good. I see some of the students here that I actually know and work closely with. Thank you so much for being here today. Today we are honored, we're actually honored to have a special guest with us. But I'm not going to introduce that individual. Matter of fact, Cheryl will be introducing the next speaker, the speaker that's going to actually present today. But it's always an honor for us to be here to present to you all these different programs that we are having so many opportunities here at Southeast College to be able to honor and recognize the speakers from our community, our leaders from our community that are stopping in to be with you and to be with our presentation here at Southeast College. There's so much taking place here and so many wonderful things that are taking place here that I know that I embrace every activity, each activity that occurs here on our college. So I am so honored also, Professor Nazal and also Cheryl Ballard, that with the type of activity that we have in faculty participation and faculty leadership, in this particular, it's a history club. And I'm honored to see that instead of just the administration planning everything, it is also faculty leadership that also participates and engages here at our college. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our professor, Cheryl Ballard.
I'd like to welcome you to our first History Club event of the fall 2012 semester. Our speaker does not want a bio, and actually I think that's part of his story, so I'm not going to take it from him, but I will introduce him. And it is Sergeant First Class Rene Al Obaidi of the Texas Army National Guard. So welcome.
Howdy, good afternoon. Mind if I step on a little bit? Okay. Kind of not used to talking on a microphone, so I apologize. A little nervous, but I'll get over it real fast. I do talk a lot. If you think I'm going away from topic, do this for me and reel me back in. And some of you remember what I was talking about. Okay. My name is Sergeant Al Obaidi. I work with Texas Army National Guard. I've been doing this. I'm actually a recruiter for the Texas Army National Guard, and I've been doing this for about 4 full years now. I was asked to talk to a class today about a month ago, and the class turned into you guys. A little bit more intimidating, but that's all right. And I was asked to talk about things that happened to me or things that were going on in my life before 9/11, things that were going on in my life after 9/11, and how maybe 9/11 changed the things that happened or didn't change the things that happened. And for me, it's hard to talk about 9/11 without talking about other things, and I will definitely try not to get political. That's not what I'm here for. And I'm not here to rouse up any discussion more than just thought, okay? The first thing I'd like to say is, previous to 9/11, I look back on our country and the things that I was doing, and it was a happy place, okay? Gas was 99 cents a gallon, 98 cents a gallon. When I was driving to Dallas to go to drill every month, I was actually in an Army Reserve unit. I got in that Army Reserve unit just to have something to do on the weekends, to be honest with you. I was in the Guard when I was a younger guy and was in college at University of Houston in the 80s, not to date myself, and it was just fun. Got out. I was out for about 11 years. Did what everybody else does. I got married. I had kids, a couple of dogs, bought a house, and bought a restaurant. Things were going well. I actually lived out in Eagle Lake, Texas. I don't know if you know where that's at. It's west of town, about 90 miles, 80 miles from here maybe, down I-10 to south of Sealy. Just to give you a geographic orientation. And moved out to the country on a spur or on a whim. I kind of lived my life like that. A restaurant came for sale, or came up for sale. I had a friend there that was a dentist. Next thing I knew, I owned a restaurant in Eagle Lake, was fishing in all the ponds around town, and just doing the normal thing. Then, like all good Americans, my wife left me and went through a divorce, had a couple of kids that were involved, and it was a tough moment in my life. People face adversity differently, and we grow from things like that. Every gray cloud has a silver lining, of course. And so I found myself single, hanging out in Eagle Lake, running a restaurant, and I thought, I'm going to get back in the Army Reserve if I'm not too old. And walked into a recruiter's office. I should have known better. And I was 39 years old. I assumed I was way too old at that point, and I wasn't, obviously. Sent me up to MEPS. That's where we in process in the Houston area. And a month later, I was going to drill. So, driving back and forth to Dallas every month, going to drill, just having a good time. I got in it for the patriotism, just love the work, the camaraderie. Wasn't looking for any benefits or anything like that. Just something I wanted to do. And like I said, good times. Restaurant was doing good. Gas was 99 cents a gallon. Bought a brand new extra truck to drive around for $99.99 from Wiesner Pontiac up there in Conroe. I don't know if you can buy a vehicle anymore for $9,999 it runs. That's brand new. And all of a sudden, a dark day in our history came. In my lifetime, and going back into recent history, back to the 50s, is recent history to me. I can only think of 2 or 3 events that even compare to what happened to us and to our country. It's a deep, somber moment for me. 9/11 was a tragedy of immense proportion. I don't know how you can compare it to anything other than Pearl Harbor and boy, that was, I just can't, other than Pearl Harbor, and I can't think of one right off the top of my head. I know earlier I thought of a couple things that might compare, but in our lifetime, this was 11 years ago. Some of y'all are my age, some of y'all are a little younger than me, or in your 20s, so that would put you in your early teens when this happened. I think everybody remembers where you were at. I do. Wasn't planning on this happening. I don't think anybody was planning on this happening to us. It was horrendous, ferocious, nothing good about it. Can't find it. I can't find the silver lining, not yet. Made a phone call, called a friend in Dallas, a unit member actually, a person that was administrator in my reserve unit, and said, hey, Robert, or Sergeant Baldwin, something's going on. And it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and he said, what do you mean something's going on? I said, I'm watching TV right now. Somebody hit the World Trade Center, and something's going on. I just know something's going on. This wasn't an accident. He's like, man, don't overreact. I was like, have we been activated? And didn't have a death wish. And don't think soldiers, that's what we do. We don't wish bad things happen. But it's just the whole football thing. When you practice, you want to play a real team every once in a while. You don't want to just hit your buddies. Called Sergeant Baldwin and said, what's going on? Hey, you're cool, relax. And then all of a sudden he said, I gotta let you go. I hung up the phone, he hung up the phone. 15 minutes later I got a phone call and said, be in Dallas in 24 hours. And that's how it started for me. From there, things changed. First thing that changed was I was traveling. Went to Egypt for a little while, about a month. Hung out, did an exercise, Army stuff. And we were actually trying to go forward from Egypt. This was shortly after 9/11. It was very early on, just weeks after. And all of a sudden I found myself in in Afghanistan, 5 months after 9/11, basically. And I was attached to a really good unit. Couldn't have gotten a better job. Excuse me, the specifics are, it was fun, and very exciting, very fulfilling. My uncle told me a long time ago, and he told me right before I left, he said, Rene, some people read about history in a book, some people watch the History Channel every day, which I do, and some people live it. And when you go do something like that, or you're involved in something like that, it is living history. So the tragedy happened. It touched everybody. I watched some of it on film, and some of what you're seeing right now the other day for the first time in a long time. Okay, to be honest with you, it rehashes old wounds. I take it very personal. It hurts my heart to think that over 3,000 people just went to work one day in a city just like Houston, and they had kids and they have children like I have, and somebody hurt them. That hurts me. I take it very, very personal, and I feel very, very sad for them and their families and all the people that are involved, because do the math. If you have 3,000 people involved, they touch 20 or 30,000 people. So besides the country. For myself, on a personal level, I was displaced a little bit. I owned a restaurant, but I was eager and ready to go. I was a soldier since 1982. And for something like this to happen, and somebody just blatantly hit you with a knockout punch like that, the first thing anybody wants to do is defend your home, your castle, your friends, your family, your relatives, your country. And I was in a small unit with 85 people. We all volunteered. We ended up there. It was a long year in Afghanistan. It was hot, and we came home. We lost a couple people there, and that's a sad part. Sometimes personal friends get involved and they don't come home. That's sad. For them, I miss you guys. So came home and was going to just jump right back in the restaurant business. Well, I know there's somebody in this room that is deployed. I'm not the only guy in this room that is deployed. And people change, and it changes you a little bit. But for the most part, you think you're the same. And you try to get back to what you were doing prior to leaving. And that was run a restaurant for me. Well, I noticed that I had lost some skills that I had before I left that were specific to the restaurant business. Sense of urgency, managing multiple tickets at the same time, cooking particular foods before you start another thing so everything finished at the same time. 1 year in Afghanistan erased all that from my memory. So it was, I had to get back in the groove. So I worked at it for about a year or about 8 months, and our country committed us to another conflict overseas, and my unit got a phone call, and once again I was heading out of town, packing my bags, and it was the second time in 2 years, but it would have finished a 3-year period of time, and the next thing I knew I was came right in the middle of the OIF-1 push, or the Operation Iraqi Freedom push, and showed up there in February and started a year in Iraq. And I don't know if you've all noticed, sorry, not the microphone. My last name is Al Obaidi. My father's from Iraq. He was born in Baghdad. Went to Iraq in 1974 for my first time. And my second time was 2004, 30 years later. Amazing. Did not know that was going to happen. Went to some of the same restaurants. Walked some of the same streets that I walked when I was 14 years old or so, whenever I went to visit my grandfather. It was very unique, being an Iraqi, fighting in Iraq. When I first got there, it was pretty relaxed. Paul Bremer had a provisional government set up. There was some stability going on. And the next thing we know, things happen. And every time you have something good, somebody likes to mess it up. About 4 months, 5 months into my rotation, things started getting kind of hectic every day, a little chaotic and a little crazy. So the next 6 months were a learning experience. You learn how you're going to respond to things when they happen, and just things that you don't plan on happening to you happen to you. It was good coming to an end. It was unique being there. I actually bumped into some of my relatives. I never thought when I was going there that was going to happen. And I didn't know what kind of reception I was going to get while I was there. It was what it was. One day I was at the Green Zone Cafe. It was supposed to be safe. I was in civilian clothes. I was actually going to the Al Rashid Hotel to link up with a couple people. And I bumped into somebody that was in the Baghdad Council. That was the new council that was set up to establish the government there. Very dynamic. It included everybody, all sections of the society there, and it was quite, I thought it was a good provisional government. I thought it was as good as it could get considering the situation, and it was a fragile situation at best. And anyways, make a long story short, this person knew my uncle, made a couple of phone calls even though I was saying don't stop. Went over to the Al Rashid Hotel, went to the 3rd floor. They had a little bar up there, and Led Zeppelin was on one wall playing The Song Remains the Same movie. And next thing I knew, somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked behind me, and it was my uncle that I had seen in 2004, 30 years previous. He had gained a little weight like me. He had lost a little hair like me, but I remembered it was him. Unbelievable. So, kind of a small world story for you. He's actually in the United States now. He worked for the government for Saddam Hussein. Lots of people that work for Saddam flipped sides or started working for our current government. So it's kind of a unique situation. And of course, after that meeting, it got kind of complicated and a little personal. Some people got involved that were non-governmental people and talked to the Army side of the house, and it just got a little crazy. Needless to say, I got to keep working, and the next 4 months changed my life for the rest of my life. I think that was probably the most traumatic period, was the last 4 months I had in Iraq. Never got scared until I had about a week left, and I knew I was coming home, and I thought, man, it's been going on around me, and things have just been happening, and they've just been, they've been missing me, and I've never won the lottery, so please don't, in the last week, let something happen. Well, nothing happened. I'm here in front of you, and I came home. I did forget to tell you that between Afghanistan and Iraq, and a real good friend told me, she said, don't do anything permanent in your life when you get home from Afghanistan. Wait at least 3 or 4 years. And I said, like sell your house, sell your business, shoot your dog. No, she didn't say that. Or get married. And I was like, okay. Well, between Iraq and Afghanistan, I got married to a girl from Eagle Lake, about 12 years younger than me, and that's the way you got to do it. So, anyways, she was homegrown, born and raised in Eagle Lake, and I dug that. And I was living in Eagle Lake, and I wasn't going anyplace, so it was a perfect fit. And we got married. I handed her the keys to the house. Well, actually, I never locked the doors to the house, so I didn't have any keys. And said, you can do whatever you want while I'm gone. You can paint, you can burn it down, spend all my money. But small things wear me out. Okay, we good? We're good. I came home, the first question I asked was, where's my golf clubs? And she said, why? I was like, well, I left them in the kitchen. And she said, well, you said I could do anything that I wanted. And I was like, well, that was like paint the house, burn the house, spend the money. My golf clubs, and where's my bike from college? She gave that away. So anyways, never understood any of that. I'm still, obviously it still bugs me, so I need to let that go. Don't know why, it's the small things. She could have spent all $50,000, and I wouldn't have cared. But she had to go move my golf clubs, and they're covered in sawdust in the garage. Came home, and kind of newlyweds, right? And we had, a month later, she was pregnant. So I have kids that are in college. I have a son that's active duty in the Air Force. Not by me pushing him. I think this isn't for everybody. Like I said, I was doing it for fun, and I think you need to do it because you want to do it, not because somebody tells you to do it. And I don't think it's for everybody, but he's doing it. So I'm proud of him. He's at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. Amazing. He's living his life. He's single, and he's in Europe. He's having a good time. My other son goes to Wharton Community College. He's a drummer, getting ready to go to Texas State. Hopefully he's going to be a drummer for them. They're Tier 1 school now, so maybe on Saturdays he'll get to go to some football games and things like that. I have a daughter that's in high school, a senior that's still playing softball and sports, and of course our Sarah. She's still like, I come home and I'm like, where's the baby? And about 2 years ago they said I had to stop calling her, she's 5 now, stop calling her baby. But I don't know what to say, other than she's keeping me young. I know what I'm going to be doing when I'm 60 years old. I'll still be going to high school football games. And so much for don't do anything big when you come home from a deployment, you know. But we had a family, and Sarah solidified the family and kind of brought everybody together. I was on a rooftop one time in Afghanistan smoking a cigar with the lieutenant colonel, and I started telling him about this girl I was dating, Melinda, that I eventually married, and said, hey, you know, back home there's this girl and she's really special, and yada yada, and you know, she's a little younger than me, she might want to have a baby. And he's like, let me stop you right there. How many kids you got? I have 2. Does she have any? Absolutely, she has 1. And he said, well, I have 2 words for you, Sergeant Al Obaidi. And I was like, what's those? And he said, bass fishing. And I was like, bass fishing? He's like, don't have another child. Go home and buy a skateboard and just start all over and act like you have a girlfriend. Well, anyways, I am so glad I have Sarah. She's beautiful and she's changed my life. And I feel like a grandparent maybe, getting a second chance for any mistakes that I made with my first kids, I don't have to make with her. Spoiled, but very appreciative and very humble and very nice. She's just a good kid. I put a Dell computer in her lap. I know you guys are totally technical and stay that way. I'm not. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 42. She got a Dell computer at 4. Threw it in her lap, showed her how to do a couple things. Within a week, I was getting a hand. I was like, can I reboot it? Oh, got it. So, wireless internet, it's kind of sweet. So, I started thinking about things that happened to me, because I don't blame 9/11 on anything that's happened to me. I feel terrible about 9/11 and the things that's happened to everybody else, and the things that's happened to my country and our country. Like I said, when I left, gas was 99 cents a gallon. My country wasn't polarized. There wasn't a bunch of there were a bunch of politicians, but they weren't arguing with each other. They knew how to compromise still. And this isn't about being right or left or who you're going to vote for. I can assure you that every president of the United States, to include our current president, were noble men that love their country, that truly believe in their own philosophy that they are going to make this a better place. They're not becoming president to mess things up. I know they have a philosophy and they want to apply what they think will work. And I know there's more than one way to skin a cat. But since I've come home, the first thing that I realized was in Iraq, I was talking to my wife and she said, they said gas is going to hit $2 a gallon by the time you get home. I was like, baby, gas would never be $2 a gallon in the United States. Well, that's one change that happened since 9/11. This machine, having 150,000 soldiers in an Iraq theater and another 40,000, almost 200,000 soldiers being deployed worldwide on a moving basis, not just stationed in a foreign post, constantly rotating them in and out cost a lot of money, and it affected our country. There was just no way, no matter who was president of the United States, that was going to affect us. So our economy has taken a great hit. your economy, my economy. It's affected me. $3.59, $3.69 a gallon is unbelievable. So I started thinking of other things. I know when this first happened, everybody remembered, everybody was patriotic, and everybody said they're not going to forget. And I'm not one that likes to draw things out by any means. I think you heard me use the word compromise. I think figuring things out, working things out is the only way to get things done. Even if it comes watered down, it gets things done. And I don't see that right now. I came home and I started noticing, I was also watching a bootleg satellite dish. The black market exists. You don't know what the black market is until you realize it's just people on the street selling stuff that isn't paying taxes to their country. And I bought a bootleg satellite dish long before I left the Iraqi theater, and I was watching the news, and I was thinking, man, why does everybody in the United States want Iraq to have an election? And I'm not going to get political on you, okay? But I was in Iraq when this was happening, and it was bothering me because I was thinking it was going to affect their stability. And I was on the ground in Iraq. I was one of 15 teams that was in Iraq that my opinion mattered. And I talked to civilians, I talked to key communicators, I talked to sheikhs, imams, business leaders, and I asked them, what's important to you? Well, to them at the time, it was the 5 basic needs or necessities of life. Security, I want my kids back in school, I want a job, I want clean water. Just basic stuff. Security, okay? They just want to be able to come out of their house and be safe. Well, kind of lost my train of thought, I apologize. But I think where I'm going with this is, just became very, very confused with the polarization that was going on in the United States because it concerns me very much. I was seeing arguments on CNN every day about when they should have an election, when they shouldn't have an election, and I was thinking, well, why are we determining when an election is going to be healthy? I don't know that that's really a mark or a bar of success, so that's kind of a pet peeve of mine during the Iraq conflict was the whole election. I felt like it should have never happened. I felt like American politicians should have just stayed out. And I feel like we made choices at anything that we could possibly do. I just felt like it was one team against another team. I don't want to start drawing sides here. And they were getting in conflict. When was a good time? When wasn't a good time? And if you go back in the time frame of the war, the conflict, you'll see it changed the day after the elections. Stability wasn't there anymore. And the argument is there, well, it wasn't stable when you were there. I was there, I got it, I was there. So I feel like I can make an educated opinion on it. I was there. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Did you run around like an idiot with a skateboard? No. But was I getting shot at every day? No. And so I feel like we've even gone farther and farther to a polarized society. I don't know that it's healthy for us. I'll just throw it out there and I'll stop talking about the polarization. That's one thing that I don't think is healthy for us. I think no matter who's our president, we need to support that person. I think whoever the other side is needs to support the other side once they win or lose. I grew up in an America where the majority ruled but the minority had a voice, okay? And I think that should still be true. Right now, I just feel like it's that side and your side, and there's just nobody down the middle. And still trying to figure that out. So, and on my side, like I said, I don't blame or feel any. I said I owned a restaurant before I went to Afghanistan. I don't own a restaurant anymore. When I told you I lost my sense of urgency when I came home from Afghanistan, and I couldn't manage the tickets like I used to, and when somebody would say, I said extra mustard, no mayonnaise, my wrist would start twitching with a spatula, and I was thinking, it's time to get out of this business. if you can't take care of your guests anymore. And when I came back from Iraq, it was worse. I sold the restaurant. Decided out of the blue not to do one of those life-changing events again, because I was doing one right after another. I went into teaching. Went through alternative certification, through somebody out of Dallas, but down in the Houston area. Started teaching government and economics in a high school. It was a blast, except for I taught all 5 social studies topics, and I was a guy. So as soon as I walked in the door, they said, "You're a coach." And I was like, "Man, I'm not a coach. You're a coach." And so one thing led to another. Well, does this mean I have a job? So I started teaching high school, and yes, I had a job, and I was a coach. Got to drive the school bus and hang out on the sidelines on Friday nights. Hey, that's all great stuff, except for me and the athletic director didn't get along. But ended up coaching the baseball team at Brazos High School. Ended up being 17-4. I'm pretty proud of that, actually. Never thought I'd coach a baseball team. They left me out to dry. Had my team, just me and my guys. That was a perfect scenario. Didn't have the help, didn't need the help, and my guys went 17-4. We beat East Bernard, and Brazos JV teams never beat East Bernard. So felt real good about my team, and I had a couple of coaches from other schools come up to me and say, "Man, how'd you do it?" "Well, magic. Man, you must have pulled some strings." I just put my guys in the positions they said they were good at, and I treated them like human beings, and we had a great time at practice, and they won 17 games and lost 4, and those 4 were my fault. It really wasn't their fault. I pulled pictures and made some just ignorant errors because I wasn't a coach. From there, I taught one more year, junior high. Girls way too mature, guys aren't. And they definitely need to cowboy up in junior high at 13 or 12. I called them little meetings all the time. I'm surprised I didn't get fired. And so here I am, a teacher, still in the Army Reserve, sold my restaurant, bought a new house, and paid cash for it, though. That was a smart thing I did. All of a sudden, I was actually looking at a 3rd deployment, and this was one I wasn't asking for. I volunteered for the first one. I begged to be on the deployment roster. After 9/11, everybody was begging to do something to help. And came home, they were going back, can't go back without us, volunteered. Found myself in the 3rd time, my new wife said, "You can't go, and I want you to stay home, find something else to do, you do too much." And I actually looked at the text. Without 9/11, I probably wouldn't be back in the Texas Army National Guard. It just kind of came up. That's where I started my career in the 80s. Got out for 11 years, got back in at 39, had 9/11 happen, boom, boom, and all of a sudden I'm standing out here and I'm a high school teacher. Teachers work really hard for their money, guys. Anybody in education here other than the teachers and instructors and professors on the college campus? Anybody going to be a high school teacher? You sure? Good. Okay, $2,000 a month? Anyways, that's all I'll say about that. Really? So I was teaching, had Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I got a phone call and said, "You're going, and you've been gone. You've been back for 4 years now. You can't hide. You said no twice," or whatever the story was, "and you're going again." And well, the wife superseded, and I found this job. This is an active duty job. I work for the Texas Army National Guard, active duty every day. I'm a recruiter, Sergeant Xavier. We call him Chevy. He works with me, he's on my team, and that's what we do. I'm a recruiter. I have about 2 years left, I retire. So in a lot of ways, I don't regret the changes that have happened to me because of 9/11. They're just life, just kind of like the divorce, things go on. I miss the restaurant a little bit, but 15 years to own a restaurant is plenty of time to be a restaurant owner. This right here, I don't know, for all the girls out there, guys are like kids till they die, most of them, not all of them. And I'm kind of in that boat. So putting on the uniform, running around with friends, 4-wheel drives, guy stuff. And it was just too easy. They pay well. The United States government definitely pays well, but I'm not here to solicit your employment or to recruit you. More than welcome to talk to us if you see me around the campus. But So that's where I'm at right now. Things are very comfortable for me. I do enjoy current events. I enjoy watching the History Channel and just keeping up with things. And I'm kind of curious. Just like I was curious a couple nights ago how Peyton Manning was going to do with Denver, I'm really curious about where my country's going, how we're going to bounce back. I know people are worn out. I feel their sympathy. And people are tired, and the money's out. And people probably feel like we've done enough damage to the people that hurt us, and it's just time to turn it off. And, you know, hopefully that happens. Everybody knows Iraq is getting turned off, or it's been turned off, and we've been uninvited, or whatever the politics of it is. I try not to get totally involved because I do still care. What few relatives I have there, I worry about their stability and everything that goes on in their life. And I know over 4,000 great Americans have gone overseas and haven't come home. That's terrible. And I know a lot of bad guys, they didn't get to go home either. But I also know there's over 6 million displaced civilians from this. That's terrible. That's an immense tragedy to humanity. To have 6 million people that were used to living where they were living, that are on the road and walking around and just trying to find a place to live in another country, in a refugee camp, or wherever they are displaced at. That is not a good thing. It's not good politics for the world. It's not good for us. And I don't think it's a Democrat or Republican thing. I think it's just a humanity thing. And I hope that it's all wrapping up. I would love to see the next president of the United States, whether it's our current president or whether it's a new president, just get things back to where they were before all this happened. I don't know that we'll ever see 99 cents a gallon again. And I know I'm never going to see a nickel candy bar again, but that was in like 1968. Can you believe candy bars were a nickel? Nickel? Anyways, I just want to see things get back to normal. And with my life, I'm okay with it. Sold a restaurant, oh well. I was a teacher long enough to know that it's a great, noble career. I can't deal with the cash. Summer vacations were okay, but you still work more than you think you do. And I'm happy. Happy with the new wife, happy with Sarah, happy where my kids are going. And I got a couple years left. I'll be 54 years old, and I'll be drawing a check. So, does anybody have any questions? Did I even talk for 40 minutes or 30 minutes? Did I? Did I go over? Does anybody have any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
I'm a staff sergeant in Town Service.
I saw the shirt.
Deployed to Iraq, being yourself, I guess Iraqi descendant. How did it feel? I'm not sure if you were part of the first wave of invasion, the one that destroyed pretty much Iraq. But how did it feel to see Iraq all destroyed?
Well, how does it? Well, he asked, how does it feel as an Iraqi to go back to Iraq and be on the first push or be part of that? And I was kind of, and to see the country destroyed, it. I don't think there was a devastation to Iraq that happened in some of the previous wars that we've dealt with. Cities weren't demolished. There were a lot of, I don't think there wasn't rubble. Okay, there was. I'm not trying to paint this great picture, but there was we have smart munitions. I don't want to get into detail or glamorize it. But if you're ever going to do something like that, it's a lot better than just blanketly carpet bombing, for a better word, and just hit civilian targets. Okay, so it was tough in the sense that it was kind of awkward, but let me say this. Once I got to Iraq, I realized something. It wasn't about Iraqis at that point. It was about the people that were going to support the change in the new government and those that weren't going to support the change in the new government. I told you there was a line in my mind that once the elections happened, it was devastating. But in my mind, Other than that, things were pretty stable. It was, I don't know, it was kind of awkward. You know, my last name's Al Obaidi, but on my body armor, okay, your bulletproof vest, whatever you want to call it, it didn't say Al Obaidi on the outside. So nobody knew until I started talking to them. I used interpreters, but I got dimed out all the time. Like halfway in the middle of a conversation, they'd be like, "This dude's an Iraqi, isn't he?" And my interpreter would go, "Well, yes, he is." And that was it. But I realized that Iraqis were fighting Iraqis. So I didn't feel like an allegiance thing. I felt like I wanted to go home. I was going to do everything I could to protect myself and my friends. And bad things like only really happen sporadically. It's not like an everyday thing. So they happen. That's just the way it is. And everybody takes care of themselves during a circumstance like that because there's nothing else you can do. So it's kind of, you know, this is the most diverse society in the world. This is a very, very diverse room. And I think that's one of the greatest things that our country has to its benefit is diversity, and that we can lean on all the strengths that everybody brings together to the table in this room. This is an unbelievable diverse room. When you go to other countries like Iraq, it's not 100%, but you see a lot of Iraqis, you know, and so it's kind of odd, to be honest, to see people in Afghanistan, the same thing. They're like, he's different. Well, he's different. I had so many philosophical conversations at 3 o'clock in the morning with my interpreters wearing night vision goggles and sitting on top of these mountains, asking them just questions because I just didn't understand why they were beating each other up all the time. And it was all tribal related, but they just all look, they're all related to me. They look very similar. The things that made them not look similar were hats or scarves or things that they wore to intentionally look different than somebody else. You know, put a Speedo on all of them, they all look the same. So, another question? It was weird. It was a little weird. But I went to restaurants, ate falafels, had a good time. Kebabs. Okay.
Where do you see our current conflict and conflicts present in the world right now?
Man, I'm such a politically oriented guy. Right now, I see everything withdrawing. Okay, Iraq's done, faucets turned off, Afghanistan's tapering off. There's a drop dead date. I don't like drop dead dates, but it is what it is. And as far as I'm concerned, I like everybody else. I don't want to pick any fights right now. I will say this about that. Boy, don't want to sound arrogant. I just think we're the Greeks. This is me. Okay, this isn't like a party line. Okay, I think we're the Greeks and the Romans of the past, and I feel like we have some sort of humane obligation. I can't sit and watch a bully pick on a kid. I've never been able to watch that my whole life. I have a problem when it goes on, whether it's the Jinjaweed in sub-Saharan Africa or wherever. So I will say this, I hope nothing else happens. I think we stand prepared to defend the defenseless, and then I know it gets political after that. I know we're going to start talking about money or oil or will we help here, we help there. That's why I'm not going to go in specifics, but you know, I never have a problem when there's a bully, because I think bullies are bullies. Everybody says punch a bully in the nose, so every time I see a bully, I think we should punch him in the nose. So, but I think it's all coming to an end. I think we're worn out as a country. I'm not saying me or Rene Al Obaidi is worn out, but as a country, I think I've been watching the news. You watch the news. I listen. I talk. Everybody asks my opinion. Everybody's worn out. Whether it was justified, this was terrible. It's been going on the whole time I'm talking. It was terrible. Okay, that whole day was terrible. The first responders, are people making cell phone calls, hacking the system. The computers couldn't communicate anymore. They couldn't send firefighters where they needed to go. They sent people out there where they didn't need to send people to go. Left them stuck like Chuck. People got hurt. Nobody imagined that the buildings were going to collapse. Nobody thought the second aircraft was going to come. It was just a terrible thing. Anybody? Anything? Yes. Do I think I'll ever go back? I'm 51. You know Brett Favre? Okay? I feel his pain, okay? But there's a realization of things, and at some point, I think you're selfish with your time. As soldiers, sometimes we can volunteer for things, and I did twice. My family has to come first. I've given my country everything I could. I'm 51 now. I got aches and pains I never knew I would have. I thought I ran around with those kids. I think I turned 44 in Iraq, and I ran around with those young guys, and I kept up with them, right far. But I don't think I'd never come back. And so if that answers your question, no. Yes, sir. Ma'am. Sir. Okay.
A lot of times we mention Iraq and Afghanistan in the same sentence, but do you think both those wars were justified just the same?
Well, obviously Iraq and Afghanistan are two totally different animals, two separate issues, two separate cultures, kind of geographically located, but they're not totally. But United States is a big place, so they're close. They're separated by maybe a state that we're used to. Do I feel they were justified? I really don't want to get into politics. I will say this. Afghanistan was, you're watching it, this ignited Afghanistan. The Taliban, I've been to Afghanistan. I don't like to make judgment on the cultural thing, but Afghanistan, the current establishment or government that was in Afghanistan was housing the people that masterminded this. So, I don't know. After 9/11, like everybody, definitely me, I'll just speak for myself, I was ready to go kick anybody's butt. That was just the way I felt about it. They hurt us, they tagged us, and it was atrocious since Pearl Harbor. There's nothing like that touched us like this had touched us.
Earlier you mentioned Pearl Harbor, which was a conflict between the Japanese and the U.S.
Yes.
But do you believe that Iraq was just as justified as us being struck by Pearl Harbor? As far as us going to attack the Chinese instead of Japanese?
Well, okay. I don't want to go back totally in history. I don't think Pearl Harbor was provoked. I know we did a preemptive strike on Iraq. I know Iraq didn't want it. I will use my trump card on this. I am a soldier, and I am told what to do by the U.S. Congress. And there's a few things I can't stand, and hey, civilian elected officials sent me there, and my only thing with that is I don't care where you send me at all. I might have an opinion about whether it was right or wrong, but I'll keep it to myself because that's not my job. But if you're going to send us, support us, or don't turn the faucet on. That's just where I stand. And that's not an arrogant thing. Boy, as a soldier, you get tied up and you're a 50-year-old guy and you got kids and you're like, then you go down range because the politics of it, it's tough, man. My dad's from Iraq. The country's destroyed right now. It's economically devastated. The only hope that they have is that they have natural resources that some other countries like Afghanistan don't have, and they're going to be able to recover because of their oil. But I don't know if soldiers even can answer a right or wrong question. It's kind of tough. That's a civilian question. I defer it to Congress in 2003 that said, well, we don't totally agree, but okay. Well, then don't agree. That's the way I look at it. Don't send 150,000 guys. And if I worked at McDonald's, it's hard for me to say I support you, but I don't support your boss. Well, he's my boss. He turns on the AC every day. So it's kind of a tough place to be as a soldier. But when you're going to send a soldier, I expect you to feed them and clothe them and take care of them and politically support the decisions that are made for us to get out as fast as possible. Hence the election. And I'll keep coming back to that because that's where I've had this discussion so many times. With this war could have been over six years ago. When I was there, I was eating ice cream on the corner. Got shot at a few times. Oh, well, things happened. It wasn't crazy. And then we had the election, and sectarian violence just went nuts. People started hurting each other. People started decapitating each other. People started going to people's houses. Just human atrocities, 20-fold. If I tell you the things I saw the day after versus before, it was night and day. So like a pleasant place to be. There's pizza parlors there until somebody blew them up. So I don't know. That's a tough call. I try not to get involved in it. Was it right or wrong? I know after 9/11, everybody wanted to punch somebody in the nose. So, question? Good question. And I'm not trying to just blow you off, sir.
6 months after those buildings were struck in New York City, the Patriot Act was enacted by President Bush. My question is, how do you balance the personal freedoms that have been taken away by the Patriot Act of just individual citizens with protecting the country? Because right now, I think that we have gone way overboard. Some of the things that are in the Patriot Act at this point can probably be reeled back in, but it doesn't look as if our government is willing to do that. I just want to pose that question.
Okay. Political questions. I'm not totally versed on the Patriot Act, but I'm definitely well aware of the information you're talking about. And I do a lot of thinking at 3 and 4 in the morning for some reason. And that was actually a couple things I wanted to bring up, and I didn't, and I apologize, you know, on some of the changes that happened in our country. Before post 9/11, you could just go to the airport and get on a plane. People didn't go through your stuff. Before 9/11, there wasn't some kind of computer that was doing a loop that was trying to pick up key phrases or words that would pop up in a conversation. And there was a lot of infringement. I've noticed almost on every single light in the area, there's a camera. And I'm thinking, I read George Orwell or 1984, Big Brother, whatever, and I thought, nah, that'll never happen. And then I started thinking, is this happening? And I'm like, well, that was science fiction. And you try to deal with some of the benefits. When the first thing I said days afterwards was, I hope this doesn't change the things that are great about this country, otherwise that means they won. So I'm all about personal freedom. I was born and raised in California. I came here in '77. I have a hard time, but then I also have the side of me that thinks somebody's trying to protect us and they're doing everything they can. They're trying not to infringe. And when I'm talking to my buddies about it, I say, well, they really don't care about what you and your girlfriend did last night, but don't use the word, don't use specific words. I'm not even saying them. And so that's tough. That's tough. It doesn't sit well with me. But it goes back to politicians need to change something if something's wrong. I don't like what's going on in the airports. I don't like that, you know, when I was in Europe, when I was a kid and I saw people in the airports with Uzi machine guns and things, I thought, man, those guys are walking around the airport with Uzi machine guns. And then after 9/11, we had people walking through our airports with M16s, and it was, it's offensive if you're not used to it. And it's abrasive, and it looks, it's a up-level posture. It's very, it can be intimidating. So, great question. But it all goes back to everybody you vote for. And I know there were circumstances and there was laws passed post 9/11 when the country was very sensitive and very supportive in a lot of ways as far as passing some laws that curtailed it. I don't know if they're right or wrong. I know they probably stopped some bad things from happening, but I still don't know if that's right. I used to love the freedoms in our country, and I think the freer the better. So, Patriot Act's a touchy subject with lots of people, lots of folks. Great question, and I'm not just trying to defer to the civilian and our politicians, but they do pay my paycheck and they do write the rules that we all live by. It's not an Army thing. We're good? Hey, I had a great time today. I'm sorry if I talked about myself way too much, but thank you guys for coming out. This started out as can I talk to a class of 20 people for about 35 minutes? That's okay. When I first started, I was a little nervous today, so I appreciate you guys just bearing with me. Hope you got something out of it, and I just, it was good for me. So, thank you.
And I would like to thank Sergeant First Class Rene Al Obaidi, who's walking away from me. Come back, Sergeant.
My mom is the dean on this campus.
Yes, his mother is Dr. Warren. She's upstairs. She's heard the story. She brought him into the world, so we can thank her for that. And I would like to present you with this from the History Club. And everybody, thank you for coming, and grab a bookmark so you know when our History Club events are. And feel free to hunt down Rene if you're interested in joining the Texas Army National Guard, or if you just want to talk to him. Thank you.